Hi there guys, and welcome to this week's main vlogging, talking kind of video. So this idea was given to me by Lee, who wanted me to kind of list and talk about my sort of top inspirational and sort of influential people that have been in my life, which I thought was a really fantastic idea. And it's also people that have kind of, since a very young age slowly carved me into the guy that I am today. Both in, general life, with the way that I am on YouTube, how I am at work, and just all little bits of my life, all the people that I'm about to talk about have had that sort of influence on me. And obviously there's inspirational, influential people, throughout the world, and you could list and keep going on and going on. But these just people sort of personal to me, so don't come back saying you missed this person off, because it's my personal decision, it's my choice who I think have had the biggest kind of impact on my life. So let's start off with number one. I'm kind of cheating a bit maybe with number one, in the fact that I'm talking about a lot of people. So I'm starting off with my family. I've been really lucky. Well, I am really lucky with the family that I've been surrounded with my whole life. A lot of people, not a lot of people, but some people do struggle with families, and there's a lot of broken up families. You can have a lot of infighting, like every family has that, but some goes a bit further than others, and people don't see members of the family for years on end and everything, and I always find that really sad. But I suppose I have just been really lucky in the fact that our family has never had that problem really whilst I've been around. I've got a very supportive, loving mum and dad who I still live with. They've always been there for me, and they've taught me so much. Like parents do. They've taught me so much throughout my life, and inspired me with various things. My dad is kind of to blame really. I suppose that's a good way of putting it, for my my obsession with Leeds United and my support for Leeds United. He it was him that kind of got me into it, along with my mum and my brother as well. But it's it's been my dad that's taken me to games, that started took me to my first away game and everything, and he's always been the one sort of travelling me around, taking me around the country with Leeds United. But in all walks of life, he's always taken me to places that I've wanted to go, that have meant something to me. So he's always made sure that I was never missing out on anything. My mum has been just the perfect mum, in that she has looked after me the way that mothers do. She's taught me certain things. I wouldn't be able to cook if it wasn't for her. I've learned so much of her from that. But again, just in general over these past few years as well, with the mental illnesses and the depression and everything, they've not fully understood it at times, but they've just done the parenting thing and been there, and just been there to support me through everything, which has been amazing. My brother as well, who he lives with his wife and my nephew, but he has been a massive influence on my life really. I mean, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be into gaming the way that I am. I wouldn't be into Doctor Who the way that I am. I probably wouldn't listen to the music that I do. It's been a massive influence when I think back to it. 'Cause I mean, when I was growing up, my brother is 19 or 20 years older than me. So when I was young and growing up, he was a young 20-year-old and everything, and he was out enjoying himself and everything, but he always found time for me, and it was just a great house to be in when I was growing up. And like I say, there's so many things between them all that has shaped me to be the person that I am today. My mum's dad, my granddad, who I spent the longest with, he died when I was it was my second year at university, or third year? I think it must have been my third year at university, so I'll have been 21. Is it three years since he died? About 3 years since he died. And he was 90 when he went. But yeah, my granddad was the most amazing man. He really was. Fought in the war. He was in North Africa, in Italy, I think. in the Second World War. He was a member of the RAF. He worked in sort of radio communications and everything there. So again, that typical sort of granddad grandson connection of, you know, hearing Holly's war stories and everything. You know, I used to go around to his and we'd watch all the old war movies together and everything, and he taught me so much, you know, and got me interested at an early age in sort of history, especially, you know, British history and the war history and everything. And it's something that, you know, I keep to this day and that I love doing. And, you know, you've seen the airfix that I make, you know, original Spitfire and all that, but not just that, just everything. Again, he was just the loveliest man. I never, well, very, very rarely saw him, you know, raise his voice at anyone or get angry. He had the most infectious laugh, which could just, you know, go throughout the room. He made us laugh so much, sometimes when he didn't even mean to. But, you know, I could have so many stories I could sit here all day and talk about my granddad, but he was just the most amazing man. And, you know, I do miss him very much, but again, I learnt so much from him, and he made me what I am today, really. So on to the next one. I should just point out at this point that this list is in no particular order. It's not sort of a 1 to 10 or anything. I'm just kind of putting it out there. So next on the list is Lucas Radebe. Those of you that are into football know he's pretty much a legend at Leeds United. He was a South African central defender that played for us. I think he came to us in 1994, 95, and retired in 2004, 2005, I think. Yeah, it must have been 2005 because he had his testimonial. And he was a player that, you know, even when I just started getting into Leeds United, I sort of straight away latched onto. He was such a battler and such a fighter in the Leeds United defence, and, you know, as you know, impressionable young lad, he was someone I straight away looked up to. And, you know, people these days and kids these days are straight away looking to your Messi and your Ronaldos and everything. You know, not many people, you know, aspire and look up to, say, a central defender like that. But for me, Lucas Radebe was that first player for me. And again, he had such an infectious personality as well. It wasn't just his football, you know, off the field he was this jolly, happy, you know, very excitable kind of character, you know, always seemed to have a smile on his face. But the fact that he could just sort of switch that off when he went into the games and, you know, would go crunching into tackles and everything and not take any prisoners, you know, I thought was absolutely fantastic. And again, an inspirational story. I mean, if anyone's read his book, it is so interesting, so many amazing stories, and he's had to go through so much in his life, you know, from growing up on the streets of Soweto in South Africa, you know, being shot whilst over there, you know, growing up in conditions that we couldn't think of, you know, losing his wife, unfortunately, over the past couple of years as well, but still keeps this smile and this personality up, you know, this infectious personality. No matter how much he's gone through, he seems to have such a positive outlook on life, which, you know, it's not just an inspiration to me, but such an inspiration to everyone. You know, he's always been involved in charities. I think he's got his footballing schools and stuff set up in South Africa and various charities there. And he is just someone who, you know, I would love to live my life with the positivity that he has and that he shows. And you know, I did meet him when I was very, very young. Didn't manage to get his autograph, unfortunately, but did meet him just for a couple of seconds. I shook his hand, and to me, that's something that will always stay with me. You know, to meet such an idol of mine like that was amazing. And, you know, one day it'd be great to see him back at Leeds United. It really, really would, because I think he's a very intelligent man. You know, he knows the game of football so well. And obviously, you know, he's a player that would be taken on by the crowd straight away. So, you know, in whatever role, not even just as a manager, just back in a coaching role or something, I would love to see Lucas Radebe back at Leeds. But again, he, not just his football, but his sort of philosophy on life and everything is something that I sort of look up to, and I find quite, you know, very inspirational, to be honest. Next up, again, not just one person. We're talking about a band here, and you can probably guess what I'm going to say. It's Les and Jake. So again, growing up, you know, when you're young, although you listen to music and you know you can kind of think you have your favourite bands and everything, it's not until you get to sort of 10, 11 years old that you start taking that first proper interest in music. I mean, put it this way, my first favourite band was the Spice Girls when I was about 7 years old, so that's a time we don't talk about. I mentioned before, you know, my brother was a big influence on me with the music that I sort of listen to today, really. So every time I would go around to his house or whatever, or he would listen to music, I would always sort of be there listening as well. And one day he introduced me to a band called Less Than Jake. Now, I'd never really experienced sort of, you know, rock, punk music that also had horns in. And at that time, it didn't really, I didn't take it in to begin with. And I think the first song he probably played me was Gainesville Rock City, I think. So yeah, that came out in '99. Or it could have been All My Best Friends Are Metalheads, actually, I'm not sure. But I was just amazed by it. Like I say, I didn't get it at first, but it was something that took my interest straight away. It was just something completely new to me, but it's something that obviously latched onto me straight away because I wanted him to copy me a CD, and you know, I got straight into it from, you know, day one, really. And that's why, you know, they're such a big part of my life, and you know why I got the tattoo and everything. You know, I wouldn't just do that lightly. You know, it's a band that has been with me through so many tough times, and due to many reasons. But I mean, their sound, I mean, I'm not the kind of guy that focuses on lyrics or certain, you know, music styles. It just kind of all encompasses in one for me. You know, a lot of things to talk about is very lifestyle orientated, about maybe things they've encountered during their life. Although I was young at the time and they were talking about more adult problems, I think it was also stuff that, you know, you could class, you know, across the board, really. You know, talking about being down about things, trying to pick yourself back up, turning, you know, situations around. You know, I mean, I used to drive my friends crazy, you know, when I was in sort of year 8, year 9, no, when will it have been? Yeah, about year 9, year 10, when Anthem came out and The Science of Selling Yourself Short came out. I mean, that is still to this day my favourite Less Than Jake song, but I would just repeat it over and over and over again, because Roger's singing style I just absolutely adore. It is so amazing to me. The music in that song is just so, it's got that upbeat tone to it and a proper sort of ska reggae feel to it, but then you listen to the lyrics and I mean, it's a very, you know, downbeat kind of song, and it kind of, you know, goes against each other, the style of the music and the lyrics, but it was just so spot on for me at that time as a very impressionable teenager. And it's just gone throughout my life, you know, they've never ever let me down. I mean, when albums have come out that haven't maybe done as well, say in with the Outcrowd, many fans didn't like it that much, and even Less Than Jake said themselves that it wasn't the best thing they ever did. But still, from that album, there's some of my favourite songs from them, and lyrically I think it was really, really good. And again, the most recent album, should I say, See the Light, which was I think just over 20 years after they first started, so you know, they're getting on a bit now in the music world. But yeah, to create such an amazing album, you know, after over 20 years in the music business, and to me is up there with their best stuff, just encapsulates how great they are. And I think they are a very underrated band, and you know, I really do implore you to go out and listen to their stuff and just give it a chance. If you're not sure about, you know, ska music and having horn sections in bands like that, just give them a chance, listen, you know, to the lyrics and to the music, and you know, hopefully that can have an effect on your life like it has mine. So next up, and this is more sort of to cater towards my YouTube and the style that I do on YouTube now, it's Daniel Hardcastle, aka Nerdcubed. Now, I think everyone, you know, watched YouTube videos for you know, a long time, but it wasn't until, for me, about 2 or 3 years ago that I started watching YouTube as a proper style of entertainment, in the fact that I would go back to watch certain people. You know, before I would pick out certain videos just to watch here and there, but Nerdcubed was the first YouTuber that I sort of subscribed to because I enjoyed watching his stuff week in, week out, and it was at that point that YouTube became more like TV for me, in the style that I kind of classed each video that he would, that would come out was like a new TV episode. And I mean, to this day, I spend more time watching YouTube than I do TV. But yeah, he was the guy that really, got me into YouTube and wanting to be a YouTuber. He was, obviously he does a lot of gaming and everything, but he did the odd vlog and sort of, question and answer things and cartoon style things and sketches. And I was just like, at that point in my life where I was wanting to know where I was going, this was my first real opportunity of being creative in the way I wanted to be. And he's such a funny person, such a funny man, and such an intelligent man as well. He knows what he's doing. He's got his head screwed on. He's crazy. He's absolutely nuts, but he's a very clever guy in what he does. But like I say, he's so entertaining and so on the ball, and he does what he wants to do. He doesn't follow the crowd and go for viewing figures and play stuff like Goat Simulator because it's just easy to get views in. I mean, he played Goat Simulator to show how much he hated it. He's not afraid to speak his mind about stuff. He will speak up about stuff he doesn't agree with on YouTube and go against people that are arguably bigger than him out there. I find him to be a very influential person on there. Due to him, I've bought several games down to his kind of review and play style of it. If it wasn't for him, I might not have played games like Thomas Was Alone and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, he says it himself, when people say YouTubers don't influence gamers, they do, because Nercube's done that to me. But more specifically, he has really influenced me in not in the content I put out there. I mean, I consider myself a very different YouTuber to Dan, but in the style that I edit my gaming videos and that I like to edit, the sort of fast-paced, jump cut sequence kind of thing, I got from him. And it's not a copying style. I mean, it had been done before, but I got it off him the way he did it. And if you look at my Rogue Warrior video, although I'm not copying off Dan, but it's very similar to the style that he does a lot of his kind of play videos as. I wasn't playing it in a serious way. I was kind of playing it to be funny. Obviously not planned out, because you don't know what's going to happen in a game you never played before. But yeah, he has shaped me into the YouTuber that I am, really. And like I say, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't even be interested in YouTube like I am now. So yeah, I've got a lot to be thankful for due to Dan. So he won't be watching this, but thanks all the same, Dan. Next up, we have Mr. Brian Cox, and he's a guy that just kind of came out of nowhere. Well, for me, I mean, he was obviously first famous for being, oh my god, what's the band that he was in? I cannot remember the band that he was in, but he was in that band in the 90s that had that one really big hit. He was the bass player in there. But yeah, it was sort of around, what do you think about, sort of mid to late noughties he sort of came out. If it came out, I don't mean it in that sense. He appeared on our screens, fronting these science shows and talking about the universe and the planet and everything. And at first, he didn't really attract me as, as a viewer. But then when because I am quite I'm into my science and I enjoy reading stuff about it. I don't always understand it. I mean, I'm not clever when it comes to stuff like that. I'm just interested in it. But Brian Cox, going along those lines, is the first person that I've been able to watch and, understand what he's talking about. The way that he delivers, the lines and everything, and the way he explains things. It's the first time I've been able to watch it and it's like, oh yeah, I understand it now. Because a lot of people can just stand there and throw these facts and long words and everything at you, and it just doesn't go in. It's impossible for me anyway. Whereas the way he does it, he properly presents it out in either graphics or with live experiments and everything. And it's just his tone of voice as well. It's so down to earth, and it's quite a soothing. It's not a fast paced talking at you. He's kind of, you feel like you can sit back and just listen to him, and what he says goes in. And he's I mean, he's just such an inspirational guy, and actually, if you follow him on Twitter and everything, he's also quite an opinionated person as well. He comes across as a very tame and timid kind of guy, but when you actually see him away from that and watch him on other programs, on interviews, you know, he's a really funny and witty person as well. You know, very quick-witted. But yeah, if you follow him on Twitter, you'll see he's also quite opinionated and not afraid to, again, speak out against people that say certain stuff. And yeah, so for that reason, in science terms, and getting me interested in science again and reading books, you know, I've got several of his books now and I watch all his series. Yeah, he's finally got me properly interested in science again and actually starting to understand things. So yeah, I've got a lot to thank him for. On to a bit of a comedy section now. So first of all, I'm going to say Ross Noble. Ross Noble was, well, no, he wasn't the first stand-up comedian I was into. I mean, I've been in stand-up comedy for many, many years now. I mean, growing up, my parents showed me a lot of you know, old style comedy, so you know, your Morecambe and Wise, your Two Ronnies, Fawlty Towers, stuff like that. So I was into comedy from a very early age, and then I started watching stand-ups, sort of your, you know, Ken Dodds, Joe Pasquale's, you know, not stand-ups that would swear a lot. Obviously, as a young kid, I wasn't allowed to watch stuff like that. So I think the first stand-up gig I went to will have been Joe Pasquale when we were in Torquay for one holiday. He was playing at the Playhouse down there, and it was just the most amazing experience, seeing someone I'd seen on TV and everything, and someone I really, you know, found funny, and then seeing them live was just the most amazing thing. And after that gig, I kind of went out, you know, wanting to discover more stand-up comedians. So I started watching more TV and shows like, you know, Have I Got News For You, at the time Room 101 was on, and I think Paul Merton was hosting, and Ross Noble came on, who, like I say, I hadn't seen before. And I mean, it must have only been a half an hour show, I think, and in that half an hour I don't think I'd laughed as much before in my life. It was the most different style of comedy I'd ever seen. I'd never seen someone manage to ramble so much, at the same time make sense, but create so many tangents and go off topic so many times, but bring it all back together at the end. And he was just amazing. And from that moment, I needed sort of, you know, watch more of his stuff and everything. So I did. I first went to see him in 2004, 2005 with my friends over in Manchester. And since then I've seen him about 7 or 8 times now. Got pretty much all of his DVDs, seen all the TV shows he's been on. And again, his style of comedy suits me just down to the ground. It's my favourite type of stand-up. You know, he doesn't go by a script. You know, he has 1 or 2 things that he may talk about in each show, but whether he gets round to it, you never know if he's gonna, because there's so much audience interaction, you know, going off you know, his environment around him. And to me, I find that comedy the most kind of clever. You know, not that other, I mean, I'm going to talk about someone else in a minute who isn't kind of like that. You know, going off a script and doing that comedy is still clever because you've got so much to remember. But for me, you know, improvisation and stuff like that, you've got to be so quick-witted and on the spot with things. And you know, sometimes it could go so wrong. You know, you can make someone laugh 1 minute, but if someone gives you something that you can't make funny, you look like an idiot. And I've never ever once seen Ross Noble fail with anything like that. I have never ever seen him die on stage. And you know, that's quite testament to, you know, a guy who's been in comedy again quite a while now. You know, it's a very dangerous style of stand-up to do, you know, like that. You know, going out there with pretty much you know, blank canvas and getting a 2-hour show. I mean, he goes on, you know, for quite a while. You know, if a show starts at 7:30, you can still be there around 10:30. So you know, you're getting 3 hours out of a guy who's gone out there with no script, which I just look up to and think is absolutely amazing. And again, the kind of, you know, I like to make people laugh, and you know, I always make members of my family laugh, and I like to think I make my friends laugh as well. And again, if it wasn't for Ross Noble, I don't think I'd have that style of comedy that I do. Because again, it's not sort of, you know, I like to think I can be fairly quick-witted at times, and you know, it's just making that sharp, quick comment you know, that can be so simple but effective. And again, it's that style that I've kind of gained from watching Ross's stand-up. So yeah, comedy-wise, he's been a massive influence on me. Likewise is Bill Bailey. Now again, Bill Bailey is similar to Ross Noble in the fact that he's very random and very, you know, off that kind of straight path. You know, you got your straight path there, and then he kind of goes off there. Like Ross Noble goes all over there, whereas Bill Bailey just kind of goes off there. But again, the stuff that is so different with him, you know, is incorporating his musical ability into his shows, and you know, doing a lot of musical comedy. And that for me again is very, very clever and very, very hard to do as well. You know, the first time I saw Bill Bailey, well, it was actually Black Bucks. I'd seen him in that. I think it was my brother that was watching it. I quite enjoyed him, and then found out that he was a stand-up. But of course he'd been a stand-up for quite a while, unbeknownst to me. So again, around the time I was kind of looking at Ross Noble, I started watching Bill Bailey. And again, it's just his style. I mean, he has that very kind of hippie look to him, obviously look to him and style to his stand-up. It's a very laid-back gig, but, well, so you think, and then all of a sudden he kind of goes on the offensive, and he'll start doing his music, and it can go all about the stage, and it's just everything about him. I mean, the way he looks is funny anyway, which I know that might not sound like a compliment to him, but you know, it is. And you know, he can play off that fact. I mean, he called one of his live shows Part Troll, which he was talking about himself, so you know, he knows to make fun of himself. But again, even though he has a script to stick to, you know, he does again involve audience interaction and playing off stuff that happens around him. And again, that is so clever to do. Even more clever if you have a script and can go off script for a minute and then go back to it. I mean, your memory has to be, you know, amazing to be able to do something like that and keep the show going in that right direction. And you know, I still say to this day that, you know, as much as I love Ross Noble and he's probably my favourite comedian, the best live show I have seen ever has got to be Bill Bailey, because I have never been so blown away by a performance in my life. I just non-stop laugh for the whole you know, 2 hours or whatever he was on stage. And again, he was someone who could react to things going wrong on stage. I mean, he was playing, you might have seen it, sort of different horns, French horns all along, and he was playing Metallica, I think, Enter Sandman, and he sort of played it, and then afterwards he realised that one of them wasn't working, and he started doing a whole thing about one of them not working, and doing different songs that would fit in with that. And I mean, the mind to be able to just suddenly go into that, even though he probably had more to talk about at that point that were on his script, was just amazing. And it just had everyone in stitches. And again, his style, you know, there's been many jokes and things that I've done kind of in a Bill Bailey style, I suppose. So in the way that I do things, and you'll hear me being funny, there's a lot of Bill Bailey in there. So my second to last one I'm going to talk about is Stephen Fry. And Stephen Fry is a man that I have kind of admired since, well, first watching QI, I suppose, or maybe even Blackadder. Again, it was, you know, I was brought up watching the older sitcoms, and Blackadder was one of the first that I got into. But it's not so much his, you know, comedy a bit, although I think he's such an incredibly funny man, Stephen Fry, and again, more underrated for his comedy stylings. You know, he's a fantastic actor as well, you know, fantastic host, but it's his intelligence and, again, just the mannerisms of him and his personality is so infectious. And I mean, it's proven in the thing that, you know, when people ask that question, you know, if you could have 5, you know, dinner guests at your table, what would it be? The amount of times you hear people say Stephen Fry is one, because you feel you could just, you know, hit it off with him so quickly and just be so in awe of his storytelling, and the way that he is, you know, around people. You can imagine, you know, him quite happily just giving you, if you met him for the first time, just like giving you a hug and talking to you for ages. He seems like that kind of guy, you know, a very warm, welcoming kind of man. And I mean, it's been well documented about the, you know, mental troubles that he's had in his lifetime. So So, you know, obviously as someone who struggles with depression and mental illness, you know, I love Stephen Fry even before I found all that out about him and I started struggling with my problems. So then obviously since I started with mine, I started reading up a lot more about him and watching stuff that he's done. And again, he's more of an inspiration to me now, due to how he's, you know, made so much of his life. I mean, he's been through some pretty tough and dark times. I mean, he's, you know, over the past few years he attempted to take his life, which was a very, very sad time. But it's hard to say his outlook on life, because obviously he's still troubled with what he has. But for me, to have all that, you know, upon you and on your shoulders, and still make the fantastic career that he's managed to do with his life, you know, being in prison at a young age as well, it's just amazing to think that, you know, he could do that. And it just shows that anyone can do that, no matter what mental illness you suffer with. You know, it shows that you can get through things and you can achieve so much with your life. And, you know, I mean, he's just recently got married to his partner, which I was so glad about. You know, a lot of people said stuff about the age gap between them, but I really don't care. I mean, he looks so happy, and you know, I was over the moon to hear that had happened for him. And again, it just shows, you know, he talked about being lonely for a lot of his life, and, you know, obviously being gay and in the public spotlight a lot. You know, he'd obviously have to put up with some horrible things at some point, I imagine. So yeah, to come through all that and now be in a happy relationship and married, it's amazing. And again, not just inspirational for me, but inspirational for so many people out there. You know, for gay people, for people with mental illnesses, and just for people in general. You know, you can do so much with your life, no matter what problems you have or what problems you have to overcome because of who you are. Yeah, he's an amazing guy, Stephen Fry. He really, really is, and someone I'd very much look up to. Literally as well, I imagine. And last but no means least, a man who we recently lost last year, under very tragic circumstances, but someone who I had looked up to my whole life and been such a massive fan of for various reasons, is Robin Williams. I mean, I did a video on it when he did die last year, and said of my shock at it. Like I say, everyone knew that he'd struggled with, you know, various things throughout his life, and depression, drugs and alcohol and everything, but it was his mannerisms and his demeanour in, you know, the public life and in the limelight, that you just couldn't imagine that this man, you know, was struggling so much in his personal life. And I think it's detriment to him, you know, even though he did go through all these struggles, and, you know, that he sadly felt he, you know, had no other choice but to take his own life, that he made people feel so happy and gave people such happiness in his, you know, performances in films, in his stand-up, you know, in people's personal lives. You know, the amount of people that came out and talked about how they'd been with him, how he'd been with them, you know, young comedians. Like, I can't remember who it was who was speaking about him now, but when they were sort of a young up and coming comedian, Robin Williams was on the same act, and at the theatre or something, apparently Robin Williams came in to this comedian's dressing room before, and kind of put on this character's, you know, a voice, and was acting like this young comedian sort of butler and everything, and was making sure he got ready okay and everything. And, you know, this comedian said, you know, I couldn't believe that this man that I'd looked up to my whole life was basically looking up at me for a few seconds. You know, he always came across like that type of man that, you know, no matter who you were, whether you were an A-list celebrity or you were just a general member of, you know, Joe Public or whatever, he would hold you all in the same regard and treat you all the same. And, you know, he was such an influence on me, you know, mainly from his films and his comedy stylings. And, you know, he's completely opposite to, you know, the comedians I just mentioned, Bill Bailey and Ross Noble. You know, he was just non-stop, all over the stage, absolutely mad as a hatter. But he said a great statement. Now, I don't want to get this wrong, but I think it was along the lines of you're only given a little spark of madness, and you mustn't lose it. And it's true. Everyone has that little spark of madness, and it depends how you kind of work with that in your life. You know, some people decide to hide it away, and just, for me, that must be a very boring life, because I think, you know, the most fun is had from being, you know, off the normal beaten track. You know, having those silly moments and those mad moments, and exactly the way Robin Williams was with his career, is so much better, so much more fun to be had. But he was amazing in the fact that, you know, his acting career spanned, well, as long as it did, but the different styles of, you know, he was in kids movies, so, you know, he entertained kids. So I mean, the first film I probably saw him in was either Mrs. Doubtfire or Hook. Now I mean, Mrs. Doubtfire is a film that kind of goes across the board and, you know, kind of entertain families, but obviously still more caters for kids. And again, I keep using the word, it's detriment to him in the way he could adapt his acting style to be in sort of a kids movie, being a bit goofy, being in another movie, say Good Morning Vietnam, where he's kind of more himself, being very kooky and mad, and then in something like Good Will Hunting, where it's a very serious, you know, character to play. And, you know, I've seen him in many other movies that maybe didn't quite, you know, hit the limelight as they did, but, you know, he could just go from one film to another. I mean, all actors have to do that, but there was just something special. There was an extra spark in Robin Williams that just kind of attracted me more. It makes it even more amazing that he managed to do all this whilst suffering and, you know, fighting the demons that he had in his life. So, you know, I think a lot of the comedy and videos that you see me doing, that you see Bartat doing, you know, there's a lot of kind of surreal stuff in there, you know, a lot of silliness in there. And again, I'd like to think that a lot of that silly comedy that I like to do and like to see, you know, comes from Robin Williams and people like that. You know, there's also other people like, you know, Monty Python. You know, I could have made this list so long, but the first person that got me into, you know, the comedy and acting stylings like that was Robin Williams, and it does still sadden me that he's not with us anymore and that he struggled so much. You know, it's sad to think that he was struggling that much in his life, because you see them out there on TV, in interviews and everything, and they put this face on and this mask, and then, you know, when this tragic event happened, you know, you don't like to think what he was going through and what was going through his mind at home and everything. And he's someone who will be sorely missed. You know, at the age that he was, he could have had so much more to give, and it's just it's a less mad world, I think, without Robin Williams in, and a much less funnier one. I think I could have gone for ages through this list of people who I feel have influenced me and been an inspiration to me in my life. But I just wanted to kind of concise it down to the ones I feel have had the biggest impact on my life. So yeah, thanks to all those people I've just mentioned. This is what you get, unfortunately. So yeah, that's all from me today, guys. How about you letting me know your sort of inspirations, your top most influential people you feel have sort of carved your life out for you. Leave your thoughts and ideas in the comments below, or you can let me know on my Twitter at ChrisJonesLUFC. It'd be nice to see what other people look up to. So yeah, that's all from me, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all very soon.